People use it to tell fortunes here.
It surprised me. Thailand people will use it, ask me, what should I wear today? Some key dates, or here's when I was born. Tell me what's going to happen today. That was just immediately really interesting to me. To the point where I'm sitting here now in Thailand with you, and I don't think it's going to be one of these things where, all of a sudden we're not going to have jobs to do because we can do all these things. I think actually what's going to happen is we just find more of those needs, those human needs. It just puts us back into the question of how do we relate to each other? That's not a job or task that's going to be replaced by the tool, because we still have to basically, get to those human connections sometime in our future where everybody kind of has access to the equivalent of Einstein, but then also to be able to have many of them for very, very cheap, close to free, because the generation costs of AI are very low. Now think about the power of somebody who asks really good questions.
Jason Kwon, Chief Strategy Officer at OpenAI, one of the key figures shaping the future of AI worldwide. This is his first exclusive conversation in Thailand. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
Officially, Jason Kwon. What have you discovered about Thais using ChatGPT? Because people use it to tell fortunes here.
Yeah, it surprised me, because this is not how people, for example, in the United States use it. At least it's not a frequent use case. But you started telling me, hey, actually, in Thailand, people will use it to talk about or ask it, what should I wear today? Here are some key dates, or here's when I was born. Tell me what's going to happen today. How should I think about today? How should I go about my day? And that was just immediately really interesting to me, because this is really a great example of how you put a tool in front of different societies or people, and they're just going to do really unexpected things with it, and not in a bad way, actually in a really good way, because it just kind of actually gets across the point of how diverse the human experience is and what all of our needs are. And that's at a very top level as to why it was interesting. And then more specifically for this use case, why did I, kind of want to double click on this to the point where I'm sitting here now in Thailand with you? There's a relationship to the tool that's being developed that's different than software before. I wouldn't say that this kind of fortune-telling use case, is about the technology in an anthropomorphized way. You're trying to get to the tool to provide you some amount of certainty in your life.
Yes.
And you may have gone to a person in the past for this certainty. Now you have the ability to go to this tool for that certainty. And one way to think about it is, the tool is now doing the thing that somebody else did. But the way I kind of think about this is there's just there's a universe of needs that people have, and those things are just not going to go away.
Correct.
Right? And this is why I'm actually pretty optimistic about the technology and its impact. And I don't think it's going to be one of these things where, all of a sudden we're not going to have jobs to do because we can do all these things. I think actually what's going to happen is we just find more of those needs, those human needs. The fact that it can now actually do some fortune telling doesn't mean that certainty has been established. It's just moved somewhere else now. Okay, so it can now tell you what to wear. But now I'm going to this event having worn what it advised me to do, and I'm going to meet a bunch of people, and I have to assess, are these conversations I want to have? Do I want to keep in touch with these people afterwards? Do I want to go to events like this again in the future? There's just more questions that come about. And I think that this just kind of expands like the field of human activity. And it just puts us back into the question of how do we relate to each other? And that's not a job or task that's going to be replaced by the tool, because we still have to basically, get to those human connections.
What do you find interesting about the Asian market now? You've been traveling around.
Yeah.
You've been talking to people.
Yeah.
What do you find interesting? What future brings for AI for this region? So I prompted. I'm going to be talking to Jason. Jason's coming on our show, and give me the top 5 questions that you think would be compelling, Woody style.
Okay.
And it depends on the episode. Some guests come and talk about their experiences in life, their work, and it depends on the mood. But it went to do research with my own show, and here are the top 5 questions. 1, when the cameras are off and it's just you with your own thoughts, what's the one truth about AI that actually keeps you awake at night?
That's a good question. I think it's the same as what excites as well, which is the rate of change, the speed. that can be great in the sense that it brings a lot of interesting things like scientific acceleration, economic growth, more opportunities. But then you also think about, the speed of change for the impact of technology on societies. You do think about, okay, are the institutions, are the structures of society ready to handle that rate of change? I think this is, in some ways, why I think that having not just us, but a bunch of other, players in the field is actually a good thing, because it helps it become much more of a shared responsibility. And I think that the more people that also enter the field, it kind of provides a little bit of, cushioning, so you have lots of participants able to help everybody else adapt to the change.
These are some heavy questions. You train in law, rules, order, structure. Mm-hmm. Now you're building AI, limitless, borderless, disruptive. Which part of you wins when those two worlds collide? That's a huge question. Dumb down, please dumb down. Now let's try that.
Yeah. I don't really think about it as a conflict in that way. You got to pick either or. I think that it's not that the rules or structures or anything like that constrain the power of the technology. It shapes its outcome, but I don't think it constrains it in that particular way. As a creator yourself, you probably agree that, defining the constraints actually sometimes is actually what causes the creativity to arise. So I guess I don't view it as a collision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone sees OpenAI shaping the future, but if I take away the title and the strategy, and it's just Jason the human being, what do you hope AI will give to your own children one day?
Yeah, this is a good question. Probably the ability to imagine their place in the world in a way that's fitted to them, and actually execute on that imagination with more fidelity than the generations that came before. And I'll add a little bit of color to that. What I mean is, you run into a lot of people in life that, they had things that they wanted to do, either passions or, dreams or, competencies. And for whatever reason, either, just circumstances, they're not quite doing those things. This is like a conundrum that goes back, it's not just a recent phenomenon, right? I think if you talk to people working in, industrial factory like 100 years ago, that's probably not what they wanted to do. And I think that this technology might have the ability to make it easier for people to figure out how to accomplish what is much closer to their actual true desires when it comes to things that they want to dedicate their life to, the skills that they want to acquire, the job that they want to have, the life that they want to live. And I think that if the tools can do that for my kids, they'll have a better life than me.
And you have two?
Yes.
Do they travel with you? Oh, they're
not old enough. Yeah. Yeah.
And
they're in school too.
They're in school.
Yeah.
Do they use AI?
They don't use it directly. We will sometimes use it together, and usually for storytelling purposes.
Do you limit their AI use?
We generally don't have a strictness about this. We just actually try to surround them with lots of things that I think encourage them to engage more with the content they're exploring. So it's not like we have 1 hour screen time rules in our house. Instead, we just have books all over the place. It's not like we tell our kids, hey, you can only watch 3 hours of TV. We just make sure that they have lots of activities that take them away from the TV. And so, I think that this is kind of a recognition of reflecting on my experience of being parented, what worked well and what didn't, which was influencing rather than directing.
Now, as a leader,
yeah.
Obviously every day we want results, we want things to get done and at a phenomenal speed nowadays. How do you balance that? With your own life? Because obviously people are burnt out, and you know that. A lot of people are burnt out because the things to get done and not enough time, and this whole time illusion that, things has to get done every day. And how do you balance that with yourself, your life, and with the team?
This one's just a struggle. Yeah, I don't think I do a particularly good job of it. In terms of managing, the rest of my life along with work. This is where I really relate to people that feel the compression of time as a consequence of technology. On this one, I'm just probably not going to have the most satisfying of answers, other than it's something I just try to work on and realize that I'm imperfect in that way.
So you're going to be going back to the US?
Yeah.
And then probably soon, maybe next year. More to come for OpenAI in Asia?
Yeah, for sure. I think the priority of the region is pretty high from my perspective, and I think this is shared by lots of people inside the company. For all the reasons that we just talked about before, right? You can look at the growth, you can look at the interesting different ways that people use it in the region, and it tells you something about how we might accomplish our mission, tells you something about the technology itself and how it's changed people's lives. And then there's just, the fact that majority of the world's population is here. And so if we want to figure out how to serve that population, it has to be a top priority.
Thank you so much for making your time to have a chat with us. And I'm looking forward to more exciting engagements with ChatGPT, OpenAI, and the AI world as well. Can't wait to see what's going to happen 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or even tomorrow for this region.
I mean, that's one thing that really comes attached to this whole thing is that there's just constant surprises. And you just have to, at some point, appreciate them all. Me sitting here right now is a little bit of a surprise in some sense in that I did not imagine this happening when we first had our conversation, about 5 or 6 months ago. But we just went with it, right?
Yeah.
And now this is the result. And so I think that approaching life with openness, I think is something that doesn't have to rely on the technology, and technology can make it easier. But if there's a parting thing I would say is it's just that taking the time to be open-minded about things, taking the time to meet new people, also kind of understand where they're coming from as an input to enriching your own worldview. So then you can take that and then figure out how to serve a bunch of other people with it. That is, I just don't think there's anything better than that.
Yeah. I like it. I like that word, openness.
Yeah.
You continue to live on with that concept in mind. Being open. Right. Being open.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just, there are many ways to use that word, and that's probably the one that particular way of thinking about it is for me at least, it's actually the most powerful way.
Why did you decide to join OpenAI back in 2020?
21. So it's a combination of two things, right? So one is when I saw the technology kind of go viral, it was GPT-3. And examples of its capabilities were going viral on social media because people were so surprised by it. That definitely caught me because it seemed like after 10 or 15 years of just this kind of uninterrupted technology growth, which was mostly built on incrementalism, this was something that was actually new. And it seemed like a breakthrough. And then the second was, just relationships. I had worked with Sam and I'd worked with Brad, our COO, in the past. And so it's a chance to work on something that, seemed very much at the edge of science and very important. And then also to work with people that I really enjoyed working with in the past. So that made it pretty easy. Yeah. One of the main reasons I wanted to come here is because I wanted to understand and learn more. And I think that is a real part of our mission because we don't think of ourselves just as a technology company. We certainly have a product. We do research. But the mission was intentionally very chosen to reflect kind of this broader purpose, which is to make sure that this technology benefits all of humanity. And I think it's in recognition of the fact that if we actually really push the scientific frontier as much as we'd like to, that products are not the only thing that are going to come from this, right? It's going to be fundamental scientific discoveries, the impact of those discoveries, and then the way that society itself changes and adapts to this technology. Sam would kind of say that this is a consequential technology that's on the par of the Industrial Revolution. So if you're a company now, how you think about that change has to be probably broader than just, we got to grow and we've got to have business success. All those things still matter. But what does it ladder up to? And I think it's that broader purpose.
Now, different parts of the world.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this. We've talked about this. You said that people search AI, use ChatGPT for different purposes. What do you see happening nowadays? What cases can you share with me in terms of statistics, numbers? Because I just ask my friends, what do you use it for?
Yeah.
Some people just use it for to get information about places and things. Some people use it as their therapist. Mm-hmm. Some people use it as a confidant as well.
Yeah. So it's all those things. And maybe a good way to first start off the answer to your question is in Thailand, some of the most popular use cases are translation, self-care, how-to advice, also personal writing. And so it kind of shows you the gamut that, that general intelligence, which is what we're really trying to work on, can span. And I think that it's also interesting to think about these use cases in relation to what people were using the tools for maybe 2 or 3 years ago, which are more about summarization, copy editing or copywriting, very writing focused and trying to speed that process up. And now actually, if you kind of think about the use cases I just went through, some of them are still, kind of utilitarian, but half of the ones I just kind of described are about self-exploration. And so I think this is an interesting evolution in the way that people are relating to the technology itself. Oh, it's not just a thing that can get things done for you. There's that, and it's really great at coding and things like that too. But I can engage in this kind of dialogue in computing, which I think was a shock to people at first. But as people got used to it, it became a way to kind of express yourself, reflect things back to yourself, and kind of engage in this process of discovery.
As chief strategist of OpenAI, what is your role, Jason?
I think the main part of how I think about this is, from a standpoint of how do we accomplish our mission? What are the ways in which we need to shape what we do to meet the external world where it is? Because you can be in a lab and you can be developing the technology, but you want an awareness of what's happening on the outside beyond just, do people like the product? And this is sort of where it gets beyond just being a pure technology company. And so nominally the functions I, kind of look after are policy, legal, social impact research, some parts of the platform safety aspects. But really what I think about that unites them or brings them all together is this dynamic I was talking about, which is thinking about the technology as not just a product, but as kind of like as a social force, right? And so how is it going to impact all these different communities? What are they going to be thinking about? What do they care about? How do you sort of bring that perspective back into what we're doing?
What was your first prompt?
Yeah, my first prompt was, what is the meaning of life? And I was just kind of being silly. This was back in 2021. It's kind of a corny question, right? But this was when we were using ChatGPT, when we didn't have ChatGPT and we were using GPT-3. And so it was a very raw interface. And I just wanted to see, could it really work with a very loose and fuzzy question like that? And the answer wasn't very good, but it was coherent. And it was about 2 or 3 paragraphs of a coherent natural language answer. And I think that itself back then was really impressive to me, even though the content of the answer wasn't particularly inspiring.
What still wows you about ChatGPT? Like up to date, even though you know all the updates, but it still wows you every time that you go into it.
Yeah, I think that it's its ability kind of handle questions you didn't think about when you were working with the people that put the tool out there in the first place. And you see this in terms of how other people use the tools. And sometimes I myself will be playing around with ChatGPT, and I'll just kind of think to myself, oh, I'll ask it this question. And it didn't occur to me that this is something you could ask ChatGPT, but I'll go ahead and do it. The frequency with which it can actually come back with something that's sensible still surprises me sometimes. But I think like the way that other people use it is probably what I find more interesting, because you're really getting at the generality of things. And so I think an example of this, if I think pretty widely, to your point about it being a confidant, again, 2 years ago, people were using it to write kind of mediocre stuff because it's not that great in terms of, new content from, a couple years ago. But now they will write, then they will give it to ChatGPT and say, critique my writing. Tell me what I could do better. Tell me what you think about this, what I've written. And I think that's fascinating because it's actually creating this space for people that maybe they wouldn't have engaged with because of maybe confidence. They didn't necessarily have the self-confidence to basically put their content up for critique. Maybe they are not comfortable sharing with other people. Maybe they're just shy. And so it's kind of letting people express a little bit more than they could have before. It's creating that space for them. And I think that there's probably many other areas like this, not just in creative writing or whatever, but just spare thoughts you might have. You want to bounce some ideas off. Now you have something that feels like a thought partner, or you want to kind of iterate on like an image you have in your head, and you have the image generation tools in front of you. I think another interesting aspect of this is the nature of communication and creativity is going to change too. It already is changing. So if you look at social media now, everybody's kind of familiar with this whole phenomenon of memes. And then you've got stuff like TikTok where the memes are videos basically. And people communicate this way now. It's a new form of getting ideas across in a very mass distributed way that didn't exist, 10 or 15 years ago. And now I think what you're going to see is people using these generative AI tools to create content that's, audio, visual, images really, really rapidly. And they're not doing it per se to, have content that they're going to try and sell or that they're trying to make art out of. It's just a way that they're going to relate to people. And I think that this is actually what drove a lot of our image gen, growth earlier this year when the whole Ghibli phenomenon took off. It was not that people wanted to try and, do Ghibli stuff to, for commercial purpose. It was just a fun thing that came about, and people really gravitated toward that as a form of communication that brought like literally hundreds of millions of people together because they were all participating in this single phenomenon. And I think you're just going to see a lot more of that. That is, again, that's like a form of like social interaction that, is going to be created or new, or brought about new because of this technology.
We're very hopeful that the system is able to solve our problems, be our friend, or be our critic at the same time. Just very worried that one day the For You page might come too fast. Meaning For You, ChatGPT. Once that For You comes, it's like it's a different animal, right? And then you seriously need to balance that as well, because you want people there with you. Yeah. Being able to talk with you, being connected throughout the entire day.
Yeah.
Speaking of connection, engagement, interacting with it as well. I think there are ways that you can interact better with ChatGPT, and I'm sure that there are things that you yourself and your team might not even know. But going around the world and seeing on TikTok the way that people engage with ChatGPT. What are some of the findings? I remember last night you mentioned about how you could ask it to do a good prompt for you.
Yeah.
Right? Can you repeat that again?
Yeah. So, people sometimes ask, hey, how do I prompt ChatGPT better? And this is something actually you can just ask ChatGPT how to do. You can say, hey, I want to accomplish certain goals or tasks. How should I prompt better? Help me write a better prompt? And I think some people call this meta prompting. And there are all sorts of interesting how-to guides around this too, which is there used to be guides on how to prompt, and now there are also guides on how to get ChatGPT or other generative AI tools to write prompts better for you. And so that is definitely something that's a good example of earlier when I said there are certain things that you didn't realize you could ask it, and then people do, and then you realize, oh, it can do that. And this is definitely one of those.
Because I think that we're living in the times when we need to see who's a great prompter.
Yeah.
School of prompts. Right? So, is there a movement for that? Because I feel like when you're hiring someone or you need to be working with someone, for me, it's not about the skills anymore. Of course, you have to have creativity. Yet at the same time, we want to also assess the way that you prompt.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I just think of it as what's the thing that's enduring about this question? And so prompting is a new thing, but the thing that's enduring that goes back, centuries is, does this person ask good questions? That is something that has always been valuable, and it may be even more valuable now because the ability to get answers or generate answers has never been cheaper. And so one way to think about this, and this is something that, a credit to Sam for how he articulates this, is the cost of coming up with ideas and then the cost of getting them done are both about to drop precipitously. And so, really what's he getting at is like the cost of intelligence is going to drop further because if we just look at the cost patterns in AI, we've dropped our prices 10x every year since GPT-3. So the cost of intelligence falling. And then there's the cost of doing things, which is energy. I think there are lots of innovations being worked on today, ranging from just more efficient generation of energy to other sources of renewable energy to then people working on things like fission and fusion. If you think about the combination of these two things, appearing sometime in our future, where everybody kind of has access to the equivalent of Einstein, but then also to be able to have many of them, and also for very, very cheap, close to free, because the generation costs of AI are very low, and the energy generation costs are also very low. Now think about the power of somebody who asks really good questions.